behalf of Benilde's Hub of Innovation for Inclusion, HIFI for short, and PowerMax Center, we would like to welcome you to Live Ed. This is a series of creative master classes for basic education teachers. But if you're not a basic education teacher and you're with us now, you are very much welcome. And you could continue to invite others as well in our next episode. Oops. Yes, you heard it right. This is a series. There will be more episodes coming. So stay tuned till the end to know what's up ahead. So we will tell you what. Today, Live Ed episode is about the how and why of turning our lessons into content, into awesome audio content, especially now when a lot of students and faculty are becoming tired with prolonged screen time. That's why, you have this new word called zombies, right? So audifying content is a welcome break for everyone. It's interesting also that the modern dictionaries have defined Audify already. So it's there in the dictionaries, in the modern dictionaries. And Audify is defined as making something audible. Brother Dennis earlier said it's like making something audible for our students. So that's what we're going to do today. HIFI is grateful to find a partner and collaborator with PowerMax Center. Both our organizations, Benilde and PowerMax, agree that learning is limitless. It's boundless, and we need to proactively shape the future of this learning. So turning you over now to Brother Dennis to introduce our awesome mentor and master for today.
Yeah, we have an awesome mentor for all of you. We have invited him here. Today, one such creative and prolific teacher will be imparting with us a way and method of teaching that sharpens not just our listening skills, not just the listening skills of the learners, but also their imagination. This afternoon, we are honored Francis Jim Tuscano. He'd like to be called Jim, for sure. Jim is the EdTech Coordinator and CLE Department Chairperson in the Grade School Unit of Xavier School, San Juan. He was included in the 30 global list of literacy leaders and change makers of the International Literacy Association for 2019. In the same year, his passion project, Kids Can Innovation Camp, was recognized by 100 organizations in Finland as one of the top education innovations around the world for K-12 education. In 2017, he was recognized as one of the 50 best teachers of the world and finalist for the Global Teacher Prize, the first Filipino teacher to represent the Philippines for his work on technology innovation in learning and teaching. He is also an Apple Professional Learning Specialist and an Apple Distinguished Educator, as well as a Digital Learning Specialist and Consultant. Aside from speaking in conferences and leading professional development for educators and school leaders, he also shares his thoughts and ideas via Empower Ed, which is an education advocacy with a podcast show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and vlog series on YouTube and Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, dear teachers, please welcome with a warm round of applause, Mr. Jim Tuscano.
Welcome, Sir Jim.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Brother Dennis. Good afternoon, Abby. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to PowerMac and HIFI and the Benilde community for this invitation. It's really an honor to be here. That was a very good introduction, Brother Den. I really, I'm humbled by that. Medyo, I'm a little bit pressured to be called a master. I mean, it's a teacher's master class, but I will be very, very confident about other things and tech. But right now, just to be honest to everyone, I don't see yet myself or doing some things with audio-based learning materials. I mean, I use this in my class, but a lot of my experiences right now will be stemming from my. It's a big pressure to be. I know that I've attended master classes and I really see those people up there. I mean, look up to. But for now, please indulge in my passion, which is podcasting. If there's something that I would be able to communicate and share to you confidently right now, it will be about my passion for podcasting also. So there, let me just start my sharing by sharing my screen. All right. So my friends from HIFI, not going through anymore. I just heard thunder. Thunder, please. I'm always scared, not because I'm scared of thunder, but because I'm scared for my internet connection. Anyway, so Audify, I like the what brother Dance mentioned about Audify making things audible. It sounds like edible. And one of the things that I've been pushing right now in terms of distance align printed base, and students have no choice but to go through it, even if it's too bland for them, right? If I will use the American terms to Western term, it's too vanilla for them. There's no excitement, right? So what I'm going to do right now is to share something about what I love to do, which is to do some podcasts. I'm gonna share to you some of my thoughts later on, but first things first, so that we can further connect with each other, I have a podcast channel. It's called Empower Ed. You can see this in Facebook, in YouTube, but more specifically in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So later on, I will try to show the process of how I will do it. I'm very thankful for PowerMac for sponsoring this. To everyone, I'll just give you a heads up. Some of the tools that I use are very much Apple-based, but don't worry about it because I've also prepared some alternative edtech tools that even if even if your students may not be using Apple products yet, it's okay. Or even you as a teacher. But again, just make sure to remember that if I show some example, the process, it doesn't mean that you can do it. I'll give some alternative. All right, so let's start with the first activity. You know, this is one thing that you could do when you're conducting an online class. Right now, it will be a long, quote unquote, online master class, but it's okay because you're adults. But when you are doing this with your students, make it developmentally appropriate. But one thing that I love to do is to always have a sort of interaction. So it's not just simply me speaking, but I try to use, like, for example, Mentimeter. We will use Mentimeter at this time because I want to know the thoughts of all people here. So we are 64 here. I hope to see 64 responses. What you're going to do right now is to, I'll give you thinking time first, okay? It's always good to give students or learners thinking time. My question really is, what kind of audio or sound file do you like listening to, right? So what kind of audio, sound file do you like listening to? So you may respond with a word or phrase, okay? Go to www.menti.com and use the code 183091. So you can do this in your class just to make sure that you get a quick feedback from your students. So pedagogical tips, so you can do this at the beginning of the class. So bring out prior knowledge, review, instead of simply asking, what did we do last meeting? I mean, medyo gas-gas na, or we're using Audify. Medyo gas-gas na yon. Instead of asking that question, you can have this. If you can also use this at the end of your class, exit ticket format, right? I have 37 respondents, 38. Okay, a minute left. This should be fun. So a lot are music lovers, podcast, MP3, Spotify, rhythm and blues, classical. I think the classical usually for learning, I use that. when I was in college. I took up philosophy, so I need classical music to help me be in the zone of reading philosophical thoughts. Upbeat, YouTube, ringtone, downloadable MP3, free audio books, and there's haha, jazz, documentaries. It's very interesting. Like I can do podcasts, listen to podcasts. I cannot sit through a long audiobook, right? I think I don't have much patience to do that because when it's too long, I kind of zoom out from the activity and I find myself doing another activity. Okay, so very interesting. I love the diversity. Ben and Ben Band, yes. Pakistan songs. Very interesting. Do we have someone from Pakistan? Wow. MP3, radio feed, stories, relaxing, audio visual. Okay. Deezer. Waves lapping on the shore. I have an Alexa right now, and to block off the noise at night, I always play rain sound. That is something that I have in my room. So every 10:30 when I go to bed, I don't sleep yet for an hour. I read some books. I ask Alexa to, it's like my lullaby, rain sound. If I'm feeling too much intense stress, I put in thunderstorm sound. Okay, that blocks everything away, right? So 10 counts, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, for those who are still trying to put their answers in, it's okay. We will keep this Mentimeter open. Just put in your thoughts there. Brother Dennis said that we have a brother from Pakistan. Hi, brother from Pakistan. I hope you're okay. I hope you're safe. Okay. Nolly said the sound of my wife's soothing voice. Okay. That's good. Your wife will be very, very happy. Right? Okay, so if you look at it, we always, the common ideas here is we use sound to entertain us, right? Like music, it helps us relax. It helps us, like what I do, for example, I have background music to help me block off the unnecessary noises so that I can sleep better, so that I can study better. So I love the different the diversity here. The smaller letters here means that they're not that much. I mean, in terms of statistics, they're not the most answered words here or thoughts. So classic, upbeat, and relaxing, jazz, classical, audiobooks. Okay, no one has used this for classes yet. Of course, you don't want to listen to that all the time, but that's understood. Okay, so thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think there is a genuine love for anything in audio format because it's very easy to listen to, even if you're doing something. You could probably just put in your earphones or headphones and then do whatever things that you are doing. Okay. It's the same idea right now. I just go back to my slide. It's the same idea of how I started with my podcast. Okay, I started my podcast. My first episode was published September 8th. That was in time for the launching of Empower Ed, which is my own personal education advocacy. Okay, so September 8th, I launched Empower Ed podcast, and simply what was my vision and mission and goal for this. So I too have my own vision and mission. That is what I love to tell everyone. When you create something, like if you're creating your own program, if you're creating your own business, if you're creating your own advocacy, for example, ask yourself the biggest question of all. The biggest question of all is why? Why are you doing this? In my case, why am I having Empower Ed podcast? Okay, it's always important because it gives you a sense of a deep reason. It doesn't mean to be like really, really deep reason, but if you have this vision in mind, it keeps you guided. It makes everything that you do align to what you want to happen. Okay, so for me, the biggest vision behind Empower Ed podcast is simply to tell the story of the Filipino teacher. Okay, to discuss problems in education. My exposure in the global community, thanks to the Apple Distinguished Educators community, where Brother Dennis has been one of the earliest members in the Philippines, one of the pioneer. We have been exposed to the different, situations of how EdTech is happening or education is happening around the world. My exposure to the Global Teacher Prize community, every year we would meet in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. And one thing that I really love about that is that there are a lot of stories. I've realized that there are a lot of stories about the struggles and the successes of a teacher that has not been told yet. We don't have that kind of voice. We don't have that kind of platform. We don't have that much platform that really tells the story of the Filipino teacher. Not just a Filipino teacher, but a teacher in general. So that was the vision behind Empower Ed podcast. So my season 1, so I also designed my art, my album art, podcast art, if you say so. I use Keynote. Or Canva. I use Canva. I use Keynote, whatever is most helpful to me. For those others there who are using Windows, you may use PowerPoint if you like, or any editing. But right now, I'm very much in love with Canva. So if you're an educator, you can use your edu email for getting a free account. So in my first season, I entitled it Gurong Pinoy, the Filipino teacher, and I invited the best teachers around the Philippines. Best doesn't mean that the perfect ones, but those teachers have been inspiration to me. Like, teachers have really shown me what it means to become a Filipino teacher. So I usually publish my podcast every quarter. So it's like in Netflix, for example, they release one episode for everyone to binge, right? So that's what I did. That's what I did also for my podcast. So I record, and then at the end of the quarter, or maybe close to the end of the quarter, I publish my episode. So usually a season would be around minimum of 10 episodes. So maximum really of 12. If it goes beyond 12, usually those are not planned, but they are like immediate. They are podcast episode that answer an immediate concern. Like, for example, when the PISA result of the Philippines came out about the very low grade of the literacy skills of the Filipino student, I was able to get in touch with the president of the Reading Association of the Philippines. And that was, a very sudden episode to address what's happening right now. So you can also do that. So it's season 1. Season 2, New Frontiers. So it was about teachers who are, taking risk, going to different areas of education, and, making an impact in their community and their students. Then, when I was preparing for season 3, the pandemic came in. I was actually going to publish or release season 3 already, but then the pandemic happened. And a lot of people did not know what online distance learning is. Since that's my expertise, really, education technology, whether it's face-to-face, online, or whatever, I created a special series, right? It's made of 5 episodes. You can check on it. It talks about, it's like a short discussion on what online distance learning is and the different aspects or topics. So this is actually one of the, I think this is the most popular season that I have. This is the reason why I was able to chart in different countries, because it was picked up by organizations outside the Philippines, and they shared it in their own website. So it's also good that if you have podcasts, you can connect with people so that they can actually share it to other people. And then this is season 4. So I was about to publish this as season 3. Pandemic happened. I changed it to season 4. Overturned. So every season I have a theme. So para lang hindi boring, so that it's not that, there's a certain level of anticipation. So season 4, Overturned, when I talk to educators around the world, and even the Philippines, their stories, we talk about their stories on how they transform, like 180 degrees, okay, transformation, okay, of education system in their locality, in their place. So season 4, Overturned, and then this is the current season right now, and it's being published every week. Not anymore. It's not anymore at the end of the quarter, because there is a demand to discuss the education this time of the pandemic. So Global Voices, pondering over education and the COVID-19 pandemic. It's our longest running season. It overlapped with the other seasons actually. So, and then it continues until now. We were able to discuss different areas concerning the effect of the pandemic. Brother Dennis actually is one of the, when we wanted to hear what's happening from Hong Kong, I was able to contact Brother Dennis, and we talk about school leadership preparation and what's happening in Hong Kong. That was very interesting. I really love doing these episodes with my guest. So the format of my podcast is, it's not just me alone, except for season 3. All right. So someone, okay, as annotated, just be careful with that. Okay. So for the rest of my podcast, mainly it's an interview. I prepare my questions and then I interact. Of course, there's a level of preparation out there so that the guests could be able to give their best thoughts. So it's an interview kind of podcast. So this is what happened. In the Philippines, I was able to go to the charts for in Apple Podcasts, for example, which you can visit. So it's Apple Podcasts and Spotify. These are free, so you can look at Empower Ed and subscribe or favorite it or listen. In the Philippines, we were always in the Spotify and Apple Podcast charts. The highest that we have gotten is, I think, top number 11. We've never gone to the top 10 because they're really popular podcasts there. But we were able to break into the top 100 in the Philippines, Singapore, and Indonesia charts. And then in other countries, we have top 200 podcast charts. Australia, Qatar, very interesting. We were shocked that we had people listening from Qatar and Canada. We were in the top 250 podcasts, in the United States, United Kingdom. So very interesting that we were able to break into the charts. But when we did the podcast, when I did the podcast, I was not thinking about going into the charts, right? I have a YouTube channel, for example, on Empower Ed. I don't see myself as a YouTuber, but I only use these platforms to tell the stories of the Filipino teacher. So when you're starting to talk about to try using your podcast, it should be very, very important to note that you just don't aim for the charts, right? It's something that you should be passionate about. Why am I speaking about this because when you get to learn how to do podcasts, you will now be able to identify what it means to be able to communicate to your students, communicate your content through a very unappreciated medium, which is the audio, right? Why is it unappreciated? It's really because we have been very much focused into the audio-visual part of it. So if there's a video, then we watch the video, right? Audio has been relegated for leisure, for example, for listening to music. But in distance education, right now, at this time of the pandemic, we're doing distance education. Audio is another format for you to share your content. And there are four reasons why I would say that audio-based learning resources are very, very, it's something that you would like to consider also. Before we go on, these are the different kinds of audio-based learning resources. So when you create your learning resources, you can have recorded lectures. Although I would say if you have recorded lectures, don't make it too long or else your listeners will sleep on you, right? So recorded lectures, stories. I love listening to stories. If you're teaching younger kids, it's very good for them to also listen to the stories being read or narrated by people like their teachers or the authors, or audiobooks, for example, speeches, interviews with experts, okay, even critiques or arguments. You can record yourself doing some critiques or arguments, and then you can have it analyzed by your students, discussions, and even recordings of performance. So for example, if you want to use primary sources, like for example, music, if you're teaching English, for example, lyrical poetry, right? So you can have them listen, okay, instead of just reading the text of the lyrics. When they hear the music, they get the tone. So it makes a difference. Drama, yung radio drama, that's very, very good as a way of doing sharing content and even plays. Okay. So what are the four reasons why we want to use audio-based learning resources? Number one, audio-based learning resources allows for memorable cues that can help students retain and understand information from the speaker. Because of this, okay, let's further discuss this. Number one, context through vocal inflection. What does that mean? When you listen to a recorded audio of your teacher explaining something, the changes in the tones, the emphasis that are being given, actually they make a difference. It gives context, it gives a deeper understanding. It allows the students even to practice empathy. It calls for empathy in learners, which means that when I listen, for example, I'm looking at the people here. For example, Teacher Ken read a story. There's a difference when Teacher Ken just gives the printed story as compared when he read the story, narrated it, and asked his students to listen. Because Teacher Ken might be on the part where everything is scary or that the character is afraid. Teacher Ken can actually change his voice, right? Teacher Ken actually can change his tone to make sure that the listen gets that, hey, the situation is scary, right? As compared when it's text, whether it's digital or printed. The dimension, the difference of depth is very, very obvious, okay? Language learners also need to hear how words are spoken. So if you're teaching mother tongue, for example, in grade 1 to grade or kinder, right, and until grade 3, I think, or if you're teaching foreign language, or even if you're teaching English and Filipino, students need to hear how to pronounce the words, right? So it's very important for language learners to listen. It's like having that sense of conversation. Okay, it's modeling how to pronounce a word. It's modeling how to pronounce a word. And then, of course, in the end, later on, I will show you how I combined, because it's blended modality, how I combined my audio-based learning resources with something like a worksheet, something like an activity. So when I do that, I actually encourage critical thinking. I allow my students to listen to me, to listen to the content, but then I also present them with different activities so that they can process what they're listening. Okay, there's a study, for example, in the Open University in United Kingdom, that when students listen to the voice of their teachers through audio, they feel a little closer. They feel a personal closeness with the instructor, which helps build relationship. And we know that if we want to teach better, we want to build relationship with our students. And when they listen to the voice of the teacher, they get a sense of personal closeness. So it sort of like brings them, even if they are far from you, like at this time of the pandemic, it gives them a glimpse of who you are. It gives them a glimpse of your personality also. Okay? So second, this is what I mentioned a while ago. It works with digital or printed text or modules to enhance and allow and engage learning. Can I just show you how I do my online distance learning? This is a sample. Okay, so I'll go back to the different slides, but I just want to make it more concrete. This is my module. So I have a professional development course for teachers. Their first module is understanding online distance learning. And if you look at the arrow, I'll have an activity there where they need to listen to my first episode in my podcast. There. So that's from Spotify. I took a screenshot. That's the first episode. But then I want to make sure that they really understood, or, if they have questions, I want them to process their thoughts. I couple it with a Venn diagram worksheet. Because in my podcast, so you will be asking right now, bakit kaya Venn diagram? Why is Mr. Tuscano using Venn diagram here? Well, it's because the content of my episode allows the teachers, my students, to compare what online learning is as and online distance learning. So it's a Venn diagram worksheet because in the end, my learning objective is for them to compare and contrast what online learning and what online distance learning is. So if you look at it, there's this now pedagogical approach here. You just don't assign a content. You don't just ask your students to listen to this and then nothing will happen. There should be always a way for the students to process their thoughts, to share what they have learned, to ask questions about what they have listened to, because this is very, very important for them so that they can actually deepen their understanding. That's critical thinking. That's engaging them. And when you ask them to do something like this, it makes everything more concrete. Okay? So, another thing, it allows for inclusivity. Easier to access, whether it's radio or smartphone. I remember recording my video podcast with Brother Dennis. It was around 800 megabytes. So brother, our interview for like around 30 minutes, that was 800 megabytes,
Wow.
720 pixel. If I made it 10 higher, 1920, that's around 1.3 gigabytes. So video, it's very heavy. And if we have students struggling with internet connection, they will not be able to survive that. So what's going to happen is, why not record it and make them, audio, like podcasts or audio files, just the independent audio files that you can share. So when I uploaded my interview to Spotify and Apple Podcast, I saved it in MP3. It just went down to 25 to 30 megabytes, right? So it's still kind of long, but the discussion was still preserved, 30 minutes, but then it's just around 25 to 30 megabytes. So it's like 1 minute is equal to 1 MB. Like your song, your 3.5 minute before your MP3s, that's around 3.5 MB, right? For those who are conscious with their storage. Very important, if you're teaching learners with visual challenges, allowing them to listen to what is being taught actually helps them understand better. Okay, so it's a little bit more inclusive in this aspect. And you know, in the end, I also love to ask my students to create their own audio file, to to create their own podcast. Why am I doing this? Because like a video, a podcast, it's also a project. And when you assign a project or a performance-based or product task to them, they can actually you're actually giving them an option. They can share their thoughts, what they have learned in video, PowerPoint, poster. Don't forget about audio, because there are a lot of students who can do well, especially when you give them freedom to choose. So it's not just sharing your thoughts, it's not just sharing your ideas here, but actually allowing the students even to understand or to share what they're learning in class. Okay. Now, very quick way of creating audio-based learning resources. The best practices, keep it bite-sized, not too long. Second, if you're recording, like you need a narrator, for example, it's okay. It's always good to practice. We remove some of our heavy accents because it may complicate the delivery. It's not that we are being choosy here about the accent and everything. It's not that. But for example, if you're teaching students, and you are a language learner, sorry, if you're a language teacher and you have language learners, it may complicate the lesson for them. And then, of course, you can use light humor if you're doing some discussions or whatever, and then allow the students to use it in such a way that they can pause, rewind, and even slow down the audio that they're listening. Okay, so it's like a video. They can pause it, they can rewind, they can slow it down depending on how they want to listen. Okay, so how do I record my podcast or my audio files? 3 simple steps. This is just very, very easy, and I will show you later how to do it. Okay, so first, I record I plan my concept. I ready my concept. I plan my script. So for example, if you're thinking about, recording a story, so you need to have your script. You need to have the story that you will have to read. If you're doing like a discussion, then you have to ready your discussion questions. You might need to practice the narrator. You might also, practice the speaker if you're not the one speaking. So for here, you need to be ready with your script, the flow of the discussion questions. You have to lay out all the plans here. Okay. Second, record and edit your audio project. So if now you're now ready, you now record and edit your audio project. What do you need? A computer, a good microphone, or even a good earphones, and then of course an editing software. Okay, I'll show you some example. I usually have just 2 examples here because they're the one that I usually use, and they're very easy to use, and they are free also for use. So there, make sure that you have a computer, a good microphone and earphones, and then of course you will have your computer. How about your recording studio? Do you need to have a very good recording studio? I, for one, do not have a very good recording studio. I just make sure that I'm in my room with very quiet surrounding. Right now, I'm using Crisp. Crisp is, you can look for it, crisp.com. It uses artificial intelligence to block off the background noise. So right now, I'm using Crisp. My cat has been, looking for its food, and it's making some noise, but you can not hear my cat right now. Okay, I also have my aircon, very noisy, but you can hear it right now. So that's Crisp, K-R-I-S-P, okay? And then number 3, when you're done editing it, when you're done saving it, you have to look for distribution processes. Number 1, if you're using offline digital modality, you can save it in a flash drive so that your students can listen to it. Or you can save it in cloud storage, like for example, Google Drive or the Microsoft I think it's the Box or OneDrive or Box or Dropbox or iCloud, anything that you can share, that you can use to share or to store your file and share to your students. Or like what I do my podcasting hosting. Okay, but it's just for free. I don't buy any. I don't really buy things like hosting websites. So I use a free website. Okay, so let me just run through how I do it. Okay, so let's do the steps 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna show you how I do my podcast. So the first one really is planning your script. So like for example with brother Dennis, I invite my guest. So if you have another speaker in your audio file or audio content or learning material, you can contact and then plan everything. So what I did with brother Dennis was to send an invitation, set a schedule, send my questions to him, and then even message him of what his questions are or thoughts about what's gonna happen. All right. After that, I set a schedule. I use Zoom. Okay, so you can record your Zoom because brother then is in Hong Kong. I recorded our Zoom meeting. So Zoom, if you have free account, it only gets to after 40 minutes, but that's okay because my podcasts are actually like 20 to 30 minutes only. So I did not get to pay for that. And then I save the recording. So since you are being seen there, you can prepare yourself like a nice clothes or whatever. You can inform your guest. And then if you don't like to record the video, you can actually turn off your video so that the bandwidth is maximized for audio. Zoom actually records the video at the same time records the audio file separately. So you can do that in Zoom. All right. So that's one way of doing it. Another thing that I use is Audacity. Let me just share. It's gonna give you a screenshot here. This is Audacity. Audacity is a free. It's a free tool. It's a free software. It's available for Microsoft or for Windows. It's also available for Mac. You can use this to record everything. The discussion, okay? That's Audacity. It's for free. You can actually download it. For those using Apple devices, you have a free application there. It's called GarageBand, okay? So this was my interview with former Undersecretary Dina Ocampo. And you know, it's just very simple. I have my introduction, like an intro music there. So you can also create your intro music. I just use GarageBand in the iPad because they have live loops. So, and then these are the cuts. So if you've noticed, there are certain cuts out there. The cuts there are actually the things that I did not like to put. Okay, so I did this and then I just saved everything. So once I save them, where do I put? Okay, where do I save? So I'm gonna show you now where I save my podcast. It's called, okay, this is the Crisp website that you can see. You can go to anchor.fm. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you the process. I hope this loads fast. Okay, so when you're looking for ways to submit your podcast online, you can actually use Anchor. Okay, so you can sign up here. So you can create here. It will send the podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, almost all podcast apps. It's 100% free also, no hosting limits, no ads. You can also monetize. So there's a monetized thing here, but it's only for US-based account. So you just need to put your content here and your information. When you're done, you can actually log in. Let me see if I can log in. So log in. So you can also sign in with Google, by the way, or other things. So log in with this one. So this is my user interface right now. So if I have a new episode, it will just load everything. So if this is my quarterly plays, for example, I have $0 because I don't monetize mine. You can have episodes here. So when you click the episodes, all of your episodes are here. There. And then new episode. If you want to upload your new episode, this is the user interface now. So when you're done recording your podcast or your audio file, you can record right away here. But one thing that you can do is just to simply upload your files. So for example, let me see if I have some audio files here. Don't mind my files. Here. So this was my last interview with Dr. Pitagan of the National Teachers College. So I just choose it. It will just upload, and then there will be some options here. And then you just save everything. So it will take much, it basically is just very quick. But what would happen is you just directly put save here, and then everything else. So I'm just gonna leave that. Everything else will just come out in your episodes. Okay. So there, and then if you access now, once you are done with this, you may now access your Spotify. So let me just open my Spotify. This is now my Spotify account. Let me just share it. Okay, so this is my Spotify account. And then I subscribe to, I have a shortcut for my podcast. So when you open your podcast here, my podcast station, everything will just be here. You can also access this, of course, in your mobile phones or whatever, in your iPad or iPad, or any devices that you have. So it's just as simple as that. Those are the reasons why I love to do my own podcast. Of course, it's part of my bigger Empower Ed advocacy. But then in the end, I use my podcast also to teach other people about what's happening in education, the life story of the teacher. And then when I taught in a senior high school in Abra, one of the projects that they have to do is to create their own podcast channel, and they get to share. They get to share their thoughts about the lesson, or they get to create some good discussion around the biggest issues that they are learning in their class. So that's how I started and how I continue to do some podcasts. So that's it. So audio-based learning resources, take advantage of them because they have a trademark of being accessible. They're not as heavy as a video-based learning resources, but they are more interactive than a print-based material. So it's kind of in the middle. But the idea here is you use audio-based learning resources only when it is possible in your own context. One of the most important things that I would always say is context before content, right? If your students do not have access to internet connection, but they have USB files with them, then you may use these kinds of content or audio-based learning or learning materials, okay? But then again, very important, make sure that when you use this in your class right now, in your online classes, in your distance learning classes, context, okay? What about radio-based instruction? The big question is, will there be radios at homes of the students? If you create your own audio-based learning resources, ask yourself, how will your students also access them? So biggest thing, regardless of the kind of modality or regardless of the kind of material, always anchor your decision to the context of your students. That's a big idea. And audio-based learning resource is something that you can make use of. So that was a very, very quick sharing of how I started my Empowered podcast and how I use it pedagogically in some of my classes with teachers and my senior high school students. Now I'm ready to entertain some questions.
Thank you, Jim. That was insightful. People learned a lot from that, I'm sure, the ones who are attending. Okay. By the way, for those of you, if you have friends who have missed this will be posted in the FB page of HIFI soon. Okay. But I think there's still some more questions, and definitely one of the questions is, what if I don't want to do a podcast? I mean, it makes me think like because podcast makes it available to other people, right? To everyone in the world, and I don't want them to listen to I don't want others to listen to my work, because it's not my dream to be known all over. So it's just for my students. How would I, in terms of context, maybe you can answer that, if I were teaching in just a regular school, maybe in Manila or in another part of the country, and then how do I distribute my audio files? How would you do that?
That's a very interesting, and I love that clarificatory question, Brother Dennis. What I usually do is to distribute it privately around the circle of my class. I also don't want to share to other people my own discussions in my classes. So what I do is to, if my students have access to internet, I don't post it in Spotify, I upload it in our Google Drive. Or if we have a learning management system like Google Classroom, Edmodo, Schoology, or any other LMS, you can actually upload them. But it's very important that when you plan to use a lot of audio files, you have to organize them. All right? You have to organize them. It could be as simple as naming your files. So, for example, it could be as simple as week 1, that topic, or discussion on blank. Because if you imagine yourself using a lot of audio files, you don't want things to be messy and kalat-kalat, sabog-sabog. Your students will be very, very, they will feel tired. That feeling of disorganized, right? It's not gonna help. So make sure that you plan the way you rename it, the way you upload it. If you have a lot, will you make folders or whatever, things like that. But then if you just want to distribute it privately for your class, that's the best way. Another way, what if my students do not have internet at home, but they have cell phones, they have computer, wala lang internet, USB, flash drives, the flash drives. Okay, so you can distribute it. You just pray that they have an antivirus in their devices, or else goodbye to your flash drive. Or Bluetooth. A lot of, like, if for example, in Apple devices, if you're using Apple devices, AirDrop, you can AirDrop the file. If you're using Android, Bluetooth, I think. Or if you're doing cross-platform, the favorite, Share It. I've heard of Share It before. So cross-platform, you can just share it,
Yeah, we can also use Messenger, right? Messenger and other things, just to send it to them. If there has to be internet, of course, definitely. Yeah. So thank you for that. Here's one more question before I go into Jenny Lynn and even Rose. Because this was an earlier question. The question of how do you put that, Jim, that piece of audio in a lesson plan? How does that work? Because the whole lesson is not an audio lesson, is it? Or you're thinking of like it's a mix of lesson plus an audio. So how would you put that together? How does audio come in a lesson plan where it's not face to face? It's like asynchronous or something like that. How does that work?
It always goes back to how you design your unit or your module. So for example, your learning acquisition, your learning experiences. You look at your learning experiences, you divide them into activities. So one of the activities could be like listening to the audio file about an explanation of climate change, for example, by Greta, the climate change activist, and you recorded, her interview. Actually, because you're doing blended modality, you have option, 3 things. For that learning activity, you attach an article for those who cannot access anything, right? The other option is audio file, right? Audio. And then the other option for those who can access it, it's still the same content, but you have video. So that's what we call, as you know, a multimodal approach. When pedagogically speaking, you can you can use different learning material, but it's still the same content. So you look at your unit, you look at your module, make sure that they are inserted in such a way that they help the students understand something. You don't just insert them for the sake of listening. It should be intentional. It's purposeful. It aligns to your learning outcomes. And Brother Dennis, I would like also to add, when you ask your students to read, listen, or watch to something, and you want to make sure that they understood it, always attach an activity that will help them process what they have gotten, right? So regardless, like could be a worksheet, I don't know, processing questions and all of that. All right. So
always use the assessment and the evaluation part. Don't forget all about it. Yes, that's what I'm learning recently with Benilde training also. There are questions here. I think I haven't seen Abby yet. Is Abby around? Abby, would you like to take care of the question of Jenilyn, or I'll do this first? Okay. The question from Jenilyn is, any tips, sir, on how to create a personal radio frequency for my students only? I'm not so sure how I can answer this. I've not done this myself, but there's a link that Nolly set there from a personal radio service. Okay, would you have the answer to this, Jim?
I just be very, very honest also here. I don't have any experience of using it, the radio frequency. The closest thing that I have is the walkie-talkie. That's it. Okay. Because that's how I imagine it. You can just, choose a frequency.
Okay, like that. Okay, yeah. But maybe correct.
But continue. Bigger, like for example, this is what my what I've been really thinking. What if your students are in the different places in your barangay or your town, right? So it's really hard for me to imagine kasi walkie-talkie lang yung na-imagine ko. Diba, there's a certain level of distance. Tama ba? I'm not quite sure because I only use walkie-talkie around if I'm running a big activity. So I'm not quite sure about it. Personal radio, I've never done it, so I'm so sorry for that. Okay. I'm not the expert on that part.
Okay. What we could do is maybe during the lobby time that we have after this, we can, if she's staying around, Jenny's staying around, we can discuss more. Maybe it needs more explanation. Well, Abby, there's a question. Maybe come in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Yes, definitely. So, Jim, Rosemary Parado ask, is it required to ask permission from the creator of the podcast before actually using the past podcast for class discussion? I think this is like referencing or sourcing all your references, because they will use it to springboard for listening tests or include it in a module that will be published.
How that will be published.
Jim, including if they will download it and then like get a file of it and put it there. Example. Okay.
So we need to unpack that. Okay. So for example, like what I do, for example, I just put the link of the podcast. Right? It's okay to use it for education, like fair use policy, education. They made it public anyway. Right? You're just directing them. You're actually helping them to get listeners, right? And subscribers. Can you imagine if you have 300 students, that's 300 plays for them. And that would put them on the charts. You put the link, right? But downloading it, you're not supposed to download them. You're supposed to stream them. It's the same thing in YouTube. Right now, what we're doing is a lot of teachers download YouTube so that because they don't have good internet connection, they use special software, but that's not supposed. That was not the plan. You cannot do that. All right. The safest thing to do is to link them, to add the link. So whether it's gonna be printed or not, just put the link there, because you're just referencing. But downloading it, you don't. Please ask permission. Maybe if they're very good, they can give you the file itself. But then again, if you're creating like modules, you just reference, okay na yon. That's good. I don't think, my biggest reminder for myself when I use something, whether it's free or not, I have the basic courtesy of giving them a heads up and asking permission.
Right.
If in doubt, always do that, regardless of the learning material or the resource that you're using. Basic courtesy,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Even if they say that you don't need to ask permission, I would always say, because as a creator myself, I put the things in public. It also helps me. It motivates me, right, to create
Mm-hmm.
more of it,
Yeah.
because I know that people are like listening and using,
Using.
right?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a very good recommendation, because I remember there was a time I was using a free resource online, and I will be using it for a scaled level. So it's not just, few small classes and stuff. So what I did was actually email and told them about where I'm using it. I'm so happy to use it. And you know what they did? They actually tracked our progress and gave us more references and gave us more
Yeah.
support. So I think, yeah, it would be very wise to actually reach out and let them know. I'm also curious, Jim. Is there any kind of lesson that's not best fit for
Oh,
for
I love
Audify?
Yeah, I love that question, because again, we need to make sure that whatever material that we use and create for our class, the big idea is they help the students achieve these learning outcomes. Always, that's a guiding idea behind it. So, for example, skill based, a lot of skill based things, like for example, how to fix a broken vase, or
Mm. Mm.
how to create a sculpture, for example. You can always explain it, but we know that that's not the best way to teach it.
Mm.
So you can always record everything, but you
Right.
know that in the end that is not the best way to do it. But what you can do is to augment or mitigate, I don't know, to combine different modalities. So, for example, for places that have no internet connection, you can have an audio file, and then you can have like a printed
Yeah.
material that shows the different steps, right? So it sorts
Yeah.
of augments or provides another dimension of what is of the text. That's very how do I remember that? When I was young and when I was in grade school, there was a certain milk product, Nido, and there was the freebies. Diba, my freebies. There was a storybook there, and there is
Yeah.
a cassette tape, right? So I would play it,
Ah.
and then I would read it. That's how I got to learn some new words, right?
Right.
So,
Wow. You remember that? Nido pa. Nido experience.
I think that was the 90s nung uso pa yung mga freebies. Ngayon ata wala na freebies sa
All
products.
right. Okay. Anyway, Abby, I have a
Yeah.
question here from, let me see. I think that's to, well, Ken asked about creating audiobooks,
Yeah.
because it really
Yeah.
depends
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
what software you use. And I think Jim has made some efforts about audiobooks before also. So can I attach my audio while reading a text? Is this possible? I'm sure I think it has to depends on the software. But anyway, you can share with him your experience on making audiobooks, if ever, on this side. Yeah.
Yeah. So audiobooks, that means that it's gonna be shared digitally, right? So yung example a while ago that was for printed, augmenting, this. What if they have access? What I usually use is for Apple devices, Pages or Keynote, and then you can add how do you call that? Add voice notes on them, right? And you can set them to play. I know that PowerPoint can do that. I, for one, I've seen public school teachers use PowerPoint. Put all the drawings, animations, and everything there. Add in their narration, and then save everything in video. Right?
Mm.
It's not
Mm.
audiobook itself, because I've never done an audiobook, but it's more of the video.
Mm.
And there's a combination of it. So audiobook, in Pages, I do that in Pages, but that's very limited to Apple devices, right?
Jim,
Yeah.
yeah, Jim, I have this. I used to play around with the Creative Book Builder. It's CBB, and it's an app. in my iOS. I think it's also available probably in another form. But if you use this, it was so easy for me. You make a page and then you add your voice, you add a video, and then you can create an audiobook out of it in the same way. So parang it really depends on how you experiment. Try to experiment. CBB is, I think, it's a free software up to now. Has been an old software, and try it first, and then see how it works for you. But I think that the difficult, no, it's not difficult. I think, Jim, you're saying that you can do these things: video, pages, and pictures, and put audio together. Yeah.
I want to share. There's a free software that I use. It's just web based. It's called Loom. Loom.com. LOOM. I actually used this one in the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, the lockdown, and everybody's just going, what's gonna happen? And I'm fearful that my students might, I don't know, they're worried as well, and I'm not reaching out. So I used my old presentation, and then I recorded myself via Loom. It's fairly easy. It was my first time to use it, and uploaded it to my students. So yeah, maybe that's something you can use. So it's still visual and audio combined.
Yes.
Abby, there's a question here. Just a quick one also. It says, is there a free version of Spotify that can be accessed on PC, laptop, and mobile phone? Well, you know Spotify very well, Jim. Can you explain quickly what Spotify is and how they can access it? Because some people already actually have the subscription for this in this group. I know. Okay.
There's a free tier. There's a free tier for Spotify. The downside is you will just have a lot of ads between music. You cannot choose some. There are some features, but I think we can survive with it if we don't want to subscribe, especially if you're just listening to podcasts, and just chilling out with the podcast.
Yeah. So, Jim, is it like when you use Spotify, you cannot download it, you can only stream it, right? Is that correct? If it's free.
You can download podcasts, but it stays inside the app. It's like you cannot remove it outside the app.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? There's a comment from Jude. To be interactive, the response or output of the students can come later, right? In audio format, the speaker cannot easily identify what's the immediate reaction of the student. Actually, there was a question earlier. How can you, it's also connected to this question about the benefits of audio technology. So how can we assess the task of students? Although you answered that a little bit earlier. But yeah, what are the pitfalls or something like this that might happen, especially if there's no immediate response? Well, it happens to video sometimes also. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's because audio files, audio learning resources, like any other learning resources, they usually are used for asynchronous activities. Like, that it's a one-way thing. Like even radio broadcast-based learning, it's a one-way thing, which means that even if video, it's a one-way thing. Right? There's no face-to-face or there's no immediate interaction. What you can do is to strategically embed, like what I did a while ago, some ways for the students to do self-reflection, or maybe schedule a synchronous activity with them. Like, for example, Monday, I will ask you to listen to this podcast. I gave you a worksheet so that you can jot down what you've learned, the questions or doubts that you have, and then go online. If you're doing online distance learning, go online on Wednesday or Tuesday. Bring with you the questions that you have. Like, we're not gonna discuss what the content of the podcast is because I think you should have understood it. What we're going to do is not to repeat it, but to discuss your questions. Right? So it makes a difference because it's asynchronous. So always make sure that you put strategically things. What if you are not doing online? Give your cell phone number to students so that if they have questions, they can call you. Right?
Call maybe. I wanna add to that. Sorry, bro. I want to add to that because I think that Facebook is free, right? For most people, right? So Facebook is free, no need for data. There is such a thing as they call it a micro learning. So they upload learning content via Facebook Messenger or even a Facebook group. So what we did as part of an assessment before, so this was a global learning. So synchronizing the, how do you say this one, same schedule is very difficult. So what we did is, for example, there was a question that they need to answer as part of an assessment. They record their audio. If they want to record it on video, they answer the question, and then they send it via the Facebook chat. So it works well because you see the different thinking processes of people through audio, because I mean it's not so canned, right? So I think it was a good exercise of sharing your audio feedback or learning as well. Yes.
That's right. Jim, so well, anyway, we're almost near the end of our time. Jim, can you make some last comments about how can teachers, now we're talking about Audify, how can they not become afraid of preparing what, because we're not used to this preparing audio. I maybe I can ask my if you have a husband or a younger to read, you have a son or daughter to read for you, that you can ask them always to speak on your behalf, to be recorded. But what would you say for people who are just starting to say, how can I use audio for my class and how can I have that confidence?
You know, it's always start with recording yourself after and listening to yourself.
Oh my.
The first step would be that one, and it would be like using the word of the generation right now, cringy. It makes you cringe.
Okay.
Like listening, you're not good, but you know you don't like your voice, but you know you're a teacher. Can just imagine how many students have gone through you listening to your voice like every day. So it doesn't really matter anymore, because unless you're going public, and you know, you will say, I don't have a voice of a DJ, but because my content is good, I feel like if I have Brother Den in my podcast, doesn't matter if my voice is not good, right? But then of course I still practice. So second thing is practice and practice. Other people would be very scared. What if I commit a grammatical error? I mispronounce a word. Always think you can always edit things out, right? Nowadays, you can edit things out. Practice. If you're not yet confident, I remember before, I always prepared my script. But then when I got comfortable with it, I just removed my script, and because I know Brother Den, for example, as my guest, the interaction was more genuine. It's more, you know, it's, how do you call it? More spontaneous. Before, you will not hear me laugh in my first episodes. Like if I listen to my first episode, I'm like, oh my God, everything's just so scripted, right? But then as you progress, so that's why it's practice. Practice, practice. Don't worry, edit, right? You can always edit it. Yeah. So there, and then listen to yourself. Accept mo na that that's your voice, right? So you cannot change.
Okay.
So
yeah.
There.
That was a wonderful response to that question. I mean, it's true. You have to practice. You have to do it in front of the video here of your camera or your mic and listen to yourself. So part of that is being able to use the software. Yung Audacity helps you when you record it. You can cut off your your dead air, and I just learned this more recently because I'm trying out audio too. Is that when you make a mistake, you say it again, say the whole sentence again in the best way you can, and just cut that part of the sentence that was the wrong one. Right? That's how it works when you say you can edit these things out. And also I've learned more recently, I think you're saying this also, Jim, is that there is a script, but there's also a not scripted thing, which makes it more. How do you feel about that? Do you make more scripts now, or do you make like outlines of your script after a while already, Jim?
Sorry, bro, I didn't get the last part.
Do you make scripts now? Do you have like a full script when you have your preparation? Maybe at the start you did that, you had to make sure, but now that you're used to it, you are now using more of like outlines so that you don't go off topic, right? Is that how it works?
I still have the questions. Questions are very, very important for me. And then what I've learned is actually to take down notes. I think that's what when I had the script, I thought everything was planned. But then when I had questions, I was able to write down notes and really take advantage of the flow of the discussion. Right? It's also being sincere. If you don't know the discussion, the topic, it's always good to accept that. So therefore, even if you're interviewing, it's as if you're learning also. So sometimes I ask the most honest questions. I would say, you're teaching me a lot. Can I ask more of this? That right. So that's if you're podcasting. But if you're creating a learning resource, please make sure that you're very confident with your content because you're the content expert, right? So there.
Thank you for that. Abby, you have other things, questions from the...
Yeah, you know what, bro? I want to be the student of Jim. It makes me want to sit in his class and listen. Because personally for me, maybe audio is one of the most least tapped faculty or resource that I need to keep using and keep practicing working with. So thank you so much, Jim. As in super, I learned a lot, even though I'm hosting. I have my notes as well, like you. I super learned a lot. And I know the audience, all everyone here, you have more questions perhaps, and then maybe as you process this episode, this learning, you will have more questions coming. So we want to make sure that we keep the communication lines open between us, between Live Ed team and you guys. So we'd appreciate if you could continue reaching out to us, and we'd appreciate also if you could give us your feedback, so an evaluation as well, a feedback. So because we want to continue to improve our Live Ed offerings, our Live Ed episodes. In our chat box right now, you'll probably see there now is a link to our very easy to accomplish feedback form. So I hope you could spare a few minutes. It's very simple. It's just ranking 1 to 5. Let us know what you think about the episode. We will also email you this link just in case you don't get to see it in the chat box. And they say feedback is gift. So thank you for your gift of a feedback form, answered feedback form. And as an exchange gift, we want to give you something as well. Maraming nagtatanong a lot of people are asking in the chat box if we will give certificates of participation. We will give. But we would like to request that you kindly send us first your feedback form so we get to process it properly and we get to identify your complete name and stuff. So yes, we will send you a certificate of participation probably in the next 2 weeks. So please expect that in your email inbox. Also, this is being recorded. A number of us also ask in the chat box if this will be recorded and it will be shared. Yes, it will be shared, much like episode 1, which you can find right now on YouTube. So we will also process this one and share it in our social media pages. So that being said, if you could please monitor, follow our social media pages of both HIFI and PowerMac. I believe the Live Ed team are already placing it. There you go. I see it in our chat. Finally, we wanna continue hearing from you. We wanna continue learning from you as well, how you find, if you get to use this Audify in your lessons, if you get to use it in class, maybe you want to share with us your experience and your best practices so a lot more people can actually learn. So you want to reach out to us and share us with your story, we'll be very happy to do that. I think that's it. Any other reminders, bro?
For me, the part that I can point out from Jim started with this thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that you know what, in this world of multitasking, audio is the one that is you're allowed to multitask. You can listen to audio while driving. You can listen to audio while running. I do that a lot. You can listen to audio. You can do 2 things at the same time. So how much? So we're able to put things. Parang you can schedule your life more by adding doing 2 things at the same time, and it's not a heavy thing. So even one brother who told me recently he's too tired of preparing the video because video is more difficult to prepare, definitely. And secondly, that multitasking, that skill of our students to multitask, that's one thing that they can learn or they can develop at the same time. So we will be having some more actually of our live ed. The reason why we came out with this live ed Audify is that we heard that the government is going to, DepEd wants everyone to be reached. So maybe audio is one way of reaching those who are at the far-flung areas of our country. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. There will be an episode 3. Yes, episode 3. We're preparing for it in August. It will be something that may be very useful for all of you too. Thank you, everyone, for joining the live ed, and thank you, Jim. Jim will stay here for a while. For those of you who still have time, maybe another 10-15 minutes. But for those of you who need to go, you can go. But the rest of you who want to still have questions, you may stay for about 10 or 15 minutes. And Jim and everyone, Abby and the technical team behind this, and also for Power Mac, thank you so much for spending your Monday with us. Bye-bye, everyone, and have a great rest of the week. Abby, you can say goodbye too.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you with episode 3. Enjoy audifying.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sir Jim.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes. Stay for. We'll just have a quick break, 1 minute for those who are staying. We will allow you to have questions. We'll find out if people are staying. Okay, there are 65 of you. So we'll have a countdown and we'll still open it, because this is like what we're doing is like being in the lobby. Jim just went to his dressing room, changed a little bit, finished with his speech, and then is going out, and we're like having our autograph session with him now. More personal question. Thank you, Merwin, for doing the feedback form. And then you were all gonna meet him at the lobby, and we can ask him questions. Could be. I'm not sure if he's allowed to ask. Give us a clue on episode 3. We'll see.
Yan na nga, sabi ko na eh.
Yeah, we want to, but we don't want to spoil your day by giving you too much information. Na parang, I'm not spoiler day, but more of like make you become so excited that you won't sleep anymore for the next few weeks. Okay.
More rock stars coming up.
Yep, more rock stars coming up. Okay. Since some people are still, Jim, you're still here, right, Jim?
Yes, bro.
Okay,
Yes, bro.
I thought you went to the restroom for a break because that's what happens usually after a speech. Okay. For those of you who are still here, there's 50 of them. They might have questions. So let's see. There was a question. Can you suggest best app to use for Audify the best app to use for teaching, the audio for teaching, and given that there is an internet connectivity issue? I think you mentioned that earlier, but maybe just a quick one before we go, for those who might have come in late. Jim?
Bro, this is Mary Jane, right? Canonigo.
Yes, yes.
This is just the best app to use. If you're recording something, record with an application that you have downloaded, right? So that the recording does not need internet connection. Because there are some, like Anchor, for example. In Anchor, you can actually record your thoughts, your audio online. I don't use that because I don't trust my internet connection. So what I do is to record with GarageBand, for example, or Audacity, right? So that's okay. The biggest challenge will be uploading and distributing it, right? That's why one of the tips that I mentioned is to keep them bite-sized, right? I cannot imagine, for example, a student, even in grade school, sitting through a 30-minute discussion, right? And an audio. The student will get bored. So bite-sized, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, quick. If you're delivering a discussion, go to the discussion points immediately. Wag na yung may pa-cute. Right? Diba? Sayang yung oras eh. Like straight to the point. Stay to the point.
All right, thank you.
Hi,
thank you,
Cyril
Jim.
from Dumaguete. I see you there.
I wrote down here because there's still imagine 42 people. We have ended already our session, but there's still people here. But so that means for those of you who stayed, this is something that you will use. I shared this with Jim. This is the site which I use, and it's free. Let me just say it's called ophonic.com. Okay,
Yes, bro.
when you have an audio file, you have 2 hours per month to just put that audio. If you have a 5-minute audio, and it makes this audio better. As in, like photos. Remember the magic photos when you magic edit a photo? It's like that. They make the audio like sound the same in terms of levels of volume. It's so easy. Just put it there, and then you have 2 hours altogether per month when you have for the free thing. So that's a lot of work. 2 hours per month of audio, right? So I'm sure I have a feeling that you'll use only about an hour, and so look into that. Auphonic.com. It's free. You can use that to make your audio even better. Yep. Jim, any more like free sites that you have? Maybe that's the question. Free sites that you use so that they can, and also sites that do not steal their identity, of course. Very safe.
Actually, I don't have much site
Okay.
because I only use this. I mean,
Mm.
when I search this, and it's because it's the most recommended sites, and they are.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
my technique usually is I don't want to look at other things, because when I started with Anchor, for example, Anchor will be the platform. So it's really
Okay.
making a decision, right?
Yeah.
However, I do know that our cell phones could also become recorders,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So if you're using an Apple device, for example, voice memo,
Mm-hmm.
voice memo is something that you can use. I know that you can download some voice apps in Android also.
Mm-hmm.
So you can also use that. But then again, always use an earphones. And then wag kayong tumapat sa electric fan. Right? Kasi that
Mainit,
is
Jim.
very,
Mainit.
very noisy.
That's true.
I remember before when I was doing my first episodes, I would look for a room. I do it every after school. So I look for a vacant room in school. I don't
Uh,
usually open the aircon then, because sometimes aircon are so noisy. Especially when everyone's quiet, when there are no more people, right? The school's not anymore noisy. So always take a balance. But now I use earphones. I use earphones, and then crisp, like what I've learned from brother. Then crisp. So
Question, Jim. I might have missed it.
Yeah.
Do you use a microphone? Like,
oh yes. I use this.
oh,
Yes.
so you've been using it?
Now
I've been
you're using it
using
now.
it since I started. I actually just borrowed one from school, then I tried using it. So that's what you can do also before you invest on something. If you have it, if other people have it, borrow and then test it, right? So although this is around 5 to 6 thousand, but I don't suggest. It's because I was preparing for a grander podcast. That was my vision. But then,
Wow.
if you don't, if you don't have the budget, it's okay, because I tried recording with earphones. But make sure that the earphones has a very good microphone in it, right? And then when you speak to it, you have to test it for yourself, because some people speak like this, right? They get the mic and then they really put it in front of their mouth. You can hear
Yeah.
everything, right? Test if it's just okay, if it's just hanging. Right. So even the proximity, I'm not an expert. I just learned it by experience also.
Yeah. But that's super good. Sorry, I'm dinudupang ko yung sorry yung mga question because there is a sale of the headphones.
Headphones. Headphones.
Headset na may kasamang microphone. So I'm thinking of buying. So I don't know. Do you recommend that?
It really also depends on the speaker. Like for you, Abby, I would recommend that because you can really modulate your voice. So practice, kasama pa rin yung practice. Kasi ako, for one, I'm a loudspeaker. So you can hear the aspirated sounds like things like that. If it's too sensitive and it's too close, you will hear all of that. And then maybe that's the part where auphonic would come in to change
to clean up.
to beautify your audio.
Beautify my voice.
Someone asked like, Ken, is AirPods Pro enough to use? It's super, super good. It's super
Speaking
good.
to an Apple expert there, Ken. So he will not say no to that.
It's super good. But then download Crisp. See, before I use AirPods. I have my AirPods right now here, but I'm not using anymore because Broden introduced me to Crisp.
So okay na.
He has a new AirPods Pro.
Yeah. Nagamitin na rin. Nakabili na eh.
Use it
Gamitin
now,
na.
Ken. Use it now.
Yeah.
So Jim, if I have the headset with the microphone, I don't need an external mic, right?
No more.
Okay.
That will
Sabi,
do.
just sa ano lang, for everyone here, learning to put, kasi this, for a woman, you mean you're destroying your hair, your everything, diba? So I think it, and then
I did not
then
think
I
about
think
that.
it's like, whoa, are you now working for a BPO, especially if you are zooming and you are the host, right? So a microphone that can stay away from the view of the speaker is very important. Like we didn't know that Jim was using actually a microphone, right? So but that's or can use a microphone in that video. So you have to balance it. If you want to look like a DJ, of course, wear one.
Yeah.
No, thank you for saying that. You saved me thousands of pesos.
It's also good to think about how you would project yourself.
That's right.
It's like your, how do you call that? It's like how you would create your identity. If you're a YouTuber, that would be super good.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Abby, you can start your vlog now. Vlog. Okay. We have 3 minutes left. We have 3 minutes left before we close the room. Any more questions or comments? People can also unmute themselves because we'd like to hear from you, just in case you have a question. Yeah.
Don't be shy.
This is like already, personal time with our speaker.
For you, what will be the most suitable and appropriate online application for us to use in online teaching? Is it easy for us for use for teacher and by the students? It's a big question. I'm just assuming that it's about audio also. Like what I've said a while ago, context. Like the things that I've shared a while ago, those are the tools that I use. I don't have any other secret. I mean, the secret is out. It's just the same thing. But then I always ask myself if my students access this if after pinaghirapan mo gagawin mo lahat, and then in the end you will just know na, oops, 80% of my students cannot access it, right? So before you jump into whatever application that you will use, context before content. So very important.
I love that. That's so student-centered. Thank you.
That's the one also we need to remind our teachers now too about the Maslow before. What was that you saying?
Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, the hierarchy of needs, right?
That's yes, Maslow before Bloom.
Yeah,
but
Maslow
now
before
Maslow and Bloom.
And blooms now because they have already the challenge is already being responded to by teachers now. Okay. So thank you so much again. And we hope to see you in our next episode this August. Thank you, Jim.
Secret.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for staying for the chat. Thank you, Jim.
HIFI and Power Map.
Thank you.
Thank you, HIFI and Power Map.